Chapter 25 of The Rejuvenation of Aunt Mary by Ann Warner. The Slibbervox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 25 Grand Finale. She has it all made up for him to marry her, and she is certainly as happy as she is and he is themselves. She is making plans at a great rate, and she has consented to have her wedding here because she wants to be there herself. The day is set for Thanksgiving, and the Lord be with us, for everything has got to be just so, and she is no more good at helping now that he's come. They are all going back to New York as soon as possible after it's over, and I hope to be forgiven for stating plainly that it will be the happiest day of my life. Respectfully, L. Cook. Upon receipt of this astounding news, Arethusa took the train and flew to the scene where such momentous happenings were piling up on one another. Her arrival was unexpected, and the changes which she found ensued and ensuing were of a nature bewildering in the extreme. Aunt Mary had quit her regime of soup and sleep, and was not only more energetically vigorous as to mind than ever, but strengthening daily as to bodily force. It might have been the excitement, for Burnett was there, Clover was en route, and Mitchell was expected within 24 hours. Other great changes were visible everywhere. A corps of servants from town had fairly swamped Lucinda, and 20 carpenters were putting up an extra addition to the house in which to give the wedding room to spread. Nor was this all, for Aunt Mary had turned a furniture man and an upholsterer loose with no other limit than that comprised by the word carte blanche. Mrs. Roscott still continued to wait upon Aunt Mary, but another maid had arrived to wait upon Mrs. Roscott. The latter had shed her black uniform and bloomed forth in rose-hued robes. Mr. Stebbins was kept on tap from dawn to dark, and the checks flowed like water. Emissaries had been dispatched to New York to buy the young couple a suitable house, and furnish that also from top to bottom. "Well, Arethusa," the aunt said to the niece when they met the morning after her arrival, "I'm feeling better'n I was last time you were here." "I'm so glad," yelled Arethusa. "They'll live in New York, and I'll live with them. As far as I've seen, there ain't no other place on earth to live. I'm going to get me a coat lined with black spotted white cat's fur, and have my glasses put on a parasol handle, and I'm going to have the collars and sleeves left out of most of my dresses, and look like other people. I'm a great believer in doing as others do, and Jack won't ever have no cause to complain that I didn't take easy to city life." Arethusa felt herself dumb before these revelations. Later she was conducted to see the wedding presents, which were gorgeous. Among them was the biggest and brightest of crimson automobiles, and Mitchell, who had presented it, had christened it beforehand the Midnight Sun. Aunt Mary's gift was the New York house, and money enough for them to live on the income. "I know you're able to look out for yourself," she told the bride, "but I don't want Jack to have to worry over things at all, and, although I know it's a good habit, still I shouldn't like to have him ever work so hard that he wouldn't feel like going around with us nights. Not ever, not even sometimes." Mitchell was overjoyed at the way things had turned out. "My dear Miss Watkins," he screamed, when he was ushered into Aunt Mary's presence, "who would have guessed in the hour of that sad parting in New York that such a glad future was held in store for us all?" "I didn't quite catch that," Aunt Mary exclaimed rapturously, "but it doesn't matter, as long as you got here safe at last." "Safe!" exclaimed the young man. "It would have been the very refinement of cruelty if my train had smashed me on this journey." Burnett was equally happy. "I suppose it will be up to me to give you away," he said to his sister. "Before all these people, too. What a mean trick!" Jack had thought that he would like to have Tweedwell marry him, as that young man had put in the summer vacation getting ordained. Tweedwell accepted, although he had just taken charge of a living in Seattle and came through on a flyer which arrived 2 hours before the hour. Some 50 or 60 of the guests came in on the same train, and Burnett and Clover met them all at the cars and made the majority comfortable in the different hotels and honored the minority with Aunt Mary's hospitality. The day was gorgeous. The addition to the house was done and lined with white and decorated in gold. An orchestra was ensconced behind palms, just as orchestras always covet to be, and a magnificent breakfast had been sent up from the city in its own car with its own service and attendants to serve it. There was only one hitch in the entire program. That was that when they got to the church, Tweedwell did not show up. Jack was distressed, even though Mrs. Roscott laughed. Mitchell wanted to read the ceremony, but Aunt Mary was afraid it wouldn't be legal, and Mr. Stebbins agreed with her. In the end, the regular clergyman married them, and just as they were all filing out, they met Tweedwell and Lucinda tearing along, he in his surplice, and she in the black silk dress which Aunt Mary had given her in celebration of the occasion. They were both too exhausted to be able to explain for several minutes, but it finally came out, of Lucinda, that Burnett, whose place it was to have overseen officiating Tweedwell, had forgotten all about him, and the poor fellow, exhausted by his long journey, had never awakened until Lucinda, going in to clear up his room, had let forth a piercing howl of surprise. So far from dampening anyone's spirits, this little contretemps only seemed to set things off at a livelier pace. They had a brisk ride home, and the wedding feast and the wedding cake were all that could be desired. What went with it was the finest that any of the guests ever tasted before or since, and the champagne was all but served in beer steins. When it came to the healths, they drank to Aunt Mary along with the bride and groom, and Mitchell made a speech invoking heaven's blessings on the triple compact, and covering himself with glory. "Here's to Aunt Mary and her bride and her groom!" he cried, when they told him to rise and proclaim. "Here's to Aunt Mary and her bride and groom, and here's to their health and their wealth and their happiness. Here's to their brilliant past, their roseate present, and their gorgeous future. And here's to hoping that fate, who is ready and willing to deal any man a bride, may sometime see fit to deal some of us another such as Jack's Aunt Mary. So I propose her health before all else. Aunt Mary, long may she wave." Aunt Mary looked as if words and actions were poor things in which to attempt to express her feelings, but no one who glanced at her could be in two minds as to her state of approval as to everything that was going on. The bridal pair drove away somewhere after 5 o'clock, and about 7 the main body of the guests returned to the city. Mrs. Roscott's mother and Mitchell and Burnett remained a day or two to keep Aunt Mary from feeling blue, but Aunt Mary was not at all inclined that way. "If those 2 young people are looking forward to anything like as much fun as I am," she said over and over again, "well, all is, they're looking forward to a good deal." "Won't we whoop her up next summer?" said Burnett. "Well, I don't know." "My dear Robert," said his mother gently. "Don't stop him," said Aunt Mary. "He knows just how I feel, and I know just how he feels. It isn't wrong, Mrs. Burnett. It's natural. We were born to be happy, only sometimes we don't know just how to set about it." "Miss Watkins has hit the nail on the head," said Mitchell, rolling a cigarette. "She has not only hit the nail on its own head, but she has succeeded in driving its point well into all our heads. She taught us many things during her short visit. I, for one, am her debtor forever. Me for joy from now on." Aunt Mary smiled. "My heavens!" she murmured. "To think how nice it all come out, and how really put out I was when Jack first began, too." Burnett put his hand in his pocket and pulled out some gum. "Robert!" cried his mother, "you don't chew gum, do you?" "Of course he doesn't," said his friend quickly. "That's why he had it in his pocket." Aunt Mary looked thoughtfully at him. "Give me a little," she said. "Maybe it's suthin' I've been missin'." Mrs. Burnett left the next day, and Mitchell went the day after. The Carpenters took down the addition, and the wedding presents were shipped to town. "She says she'll be goin' soon," said Lucinda to Joshua. "Then she'll be goin' soon," said Joshua. "I'm sure I'll be glad," said Lucinda. "Such highfalutin' skylarkin'." Joshua said nothing. Mr. Stebbins had apprised him of Aunt Mary's arrangements in his behalf, and he felt no inclination to criticize any of her doings and sayings. Toward the end of the next week this telegram was received: "Dear Aunt Mary, we're home and ready when you are. Telegraph what train. J and J." The telegram was handed to Aunt Mary at 10 in the morning. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. "My heavens alive, Lucinda!" she cried the next minute. "I do believe, if you'll be quick, that I can make the 12:20. Run! Tell Joshua to get my trunk down and harness Billy as quick as he can. He can telegraph that I'm comin' after I'm gone." Lucinda flew Joshua words. "She wants to make the 12:20 train," she cried. Joshua looked up. "Then she'll make it," he said. She made it. End of chapter 25. End of The Rejuvenation of Aunt Mary by Ann Warner. Recorded by Trisha G. Thanks for listening.